Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. I welcome the witnesses and subcommittee members, as well as a few distinguished members that have asked to participate in this legislative hearing today. They'll be here at their convenience. As I've often said in the subcommittee, we operate in a nonpartisan way. I'm very proud of my Republican and Democrat colleagues for continuing to do so. We have 13 important legislative proposals to consider here today, and not all the proposals will move forward in this process, unfortunately. The purpose of this hearing is to hear from folks with expertise on assisting veterans about the benefits and shortcomings of the various pieces of legislation. Without thorough agency and stakeholder insight, the subcommittee would be unable to move several important pieces of legislation so far this Congress. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today on their thoughts on the bills that have been noticed. A number of these proposals seek to improve the education experience for America's veterans and make it easier for veterans to receive accurate information about their options for using the GI Bill benefits and ensure that they get the best bang for their buck with the GI Bill. As a veteran who served for this nation for over 26 years, I know how important the GI Bill is for opening doors for transitioning service members to become productive members of society following their service. I specifically want to highlight my friend and colleague, Mr. Subcommittee's proposal, the Expanding Access for Online Veteran Students Act. For years, the subcommittee has heard from many student veterans about how the online monthly housing allowance is too low, and it puts many student veterans who need to take online classes during the summer because they have a family, a job, or not near the college at a disadvantage and struggling to make ends meet. Mr. Subcommittee's proposal would address these concerns head-on for student veterans who take summer courses. It would also allow students attending universities in person the fall and spring to not have to worry about putting food on the table during the summer. With skyrocketing inflation and the cost of living higher than ever, this bill will help fix and ensure student veterans have access to the resources they need, and I'm happy to be one of the original co-sponsors on this legislation. We will also consider bills to improve suicide prevention and outreach services and advance the home loan program. We'll also consider H.R. 5913. My bill will eliminate bureaucratic red tape and help the lack of accountability that veterans are met with when seeking employment assistance. While this bill would move DOL vets to a VA, it would not lead to employees being fired or the unions lacking representation. Instead, this proposal will allow for better accountability and oversight between Congress and DOL vets and ensure the agency is here to serve its veterans first and put everything else aside. Finally, we'll hear from stakeholders at the VA about the idea of a fourth administration. Over the last few years, we've seen VBA's number of employees dramatically increase. However, the subcommittee still hears significant concerns about the quality service delivered to veterans from the VBA. And to that end, I'm going to be asking the VA to provide the subcommittee with a detailed breakdown of employees at Veterans Benefits Administration assigned to address the employment and education needs to our veterans. And I think it's very important that the committee understand how these resources are prioritized. So essentially, I just need a list of troop to task, just in military parlance. I do have reservations about several of the proposals on the agenda today, and the witness testimony in question members of the subcommittee will ask today will hopefully address some of these issues so members can make informed decisions about these bills. We look forward to hearing from the members who've introduced these proposals as well as our witnesses on how we can continue to improve these bills and create more economic opportunities for veterans. I will now yield to my ranking member for 5 minutes for his opening remarks.
Well, thanks so much, Chairman Van Orden, for holding this important hearing, 13 pieces of legislation in Congress, including this committee. We've got some lost time last few weeks. We're making up for it, and I'm absolutely thrilled about that. And we've got some really important bills here that we need to get to the floor. One in particular, H.R. 3848, the HOME Act, which will mean thousands of veterans once again being able to travel to medical appointments and be able to receive assistance from VA as winter approaches. I'm similarly eager to advance many of the bills before the subcommittee this afternoon, including my legislation, the Veterans Assistance for Loan Origination Relief, or VALOR Act, pretty good acronym, to make homeownership more accessible for transitioning service members with disabilities. Under current policies, veterans who receive a disability rating after closing on their home may be refunded the VA home loan funding fee. However, transitioning service members with a pending pre-discharge claim at the time of closing are not eligible for a refund if they later receive a rating. The Valor Act would make these individuals eligible for a refund, eliminating this disparity. In doing so, it'll support disabled service members transitioning out of the military and setting a strong foundation for their civilian lives. Also on the agenda is Rep. Budzinski's H.R. 5785. This legislation would open up the Edith Norris Rogers STEM Scholarship Program to more veterans pursuing further education in science, technology, engineering, and math. This program has had exceptionally low participation due to overly restrictive guidelines limiting student veterans' opportunities. I want to thank the chairman for also including H.R. 3738 in today's hearing, which I introduced with Representative Wenstrup to establish a fourth administration within VA to focus on veteran housing, education, and other benefits. And Brad and I have been working on this for quite a while. This bill would more closely align VA with how our committee delineates veterans' policy issues and elevate economic programs at the undersecretary level, bolstering oversight of these benefits so they can be delivered more effectively. I do want to raise some concerns regarding the legislation to move DOL VETS programs to VA. The Department of Labor is our government's best place for finding employment resources and has been effective in running the programs within its Veterans Employment and Training Service. Some will remember that when this committee advocated for moving the responsibility for service member transition from DoD to VA, we highlighted that DoD didn't share the mission or goals of these programs, and that's simply not true for employment and DOL vets. Finally, I want to address a proposal to provide full monthly housing allowance for online learning for student veterans. We've got to continue making progress when it comes to providing veterans with access to education, and COVID showed the value in online learning opportunities. But research has shown clearly that you can't fully replicate the experience of in-person learning with online learning. That's true for veterans, it's true for everybody. I have 2 young kids at home, so I can attest to this one. I hope that as we discuss the Expanding Access for Online Veteran Students Act, we look at how we can improve learning opportunities, not drive more students to lower performing programs. So I look forward to our work today and moving forward to advance the strongest proposals to full committee as quickly as possible. And my thanks again to our chairman for holding today's hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. In accordance with committee rules, I ask unanimous consent that Representative Edwards from North Carolina be permitted to participate in today's subcommittee hearing. Without objection, I'll now introduce the witness panel. Our first witness is Mr. Joseph Garcia, the Executive Director of Education Services at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Garcia is accompanied by Nick Pampern, Executive Director of Veterans Readiness and Employment Services, and Mr. James Ruhlman, the Deputy Director of Education Services. Our second witness is Ms. Margarita Devlin, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Operations and Management for Veterans Employment and Training Services at the Department of Labor. I will now swear in the witnesses. I ask the witnesses to stand in the first panel. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record reflect the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I ask the witnesses and members today to respect the 5-minute rule. I'm just going to say this. You guys know the deal. You've been here long enough that everybody stops at 5 minutes. So thank you for that. Mr. Garcia, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good afternoon, Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Levin, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss pending legislation that would affect VA's programs and services. With me is Mr. Nick Pampern, Executive Director, Veteran Readiness and Employment Service, and Mr. James Ruhlman, Deputy Director, Education Service. Mr. Chairman, with 12 bills on the agenda, I will highlight several in my oral statement, as we have provided detailed comments in the full testimony to include areas of support and concern. VA would support, if amended, Section 2 of the Improving Service Member Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act. Currently, VA Solid Start, or VAS, employees conduct personalized conversations tailored to the unique and needs of recent separated service members to increase awareness and use of VA benefits and services. VA has concerns that the bill may restrict the intent of the VAS program. VA would support, if amended, the draft bill that waives the loan fee for a veteran obtaining a VA guaranteed loan based on the date of the veteran's pre-discharge medical examination rather than on the date of a rating or memorandum rating for disability compensation. This would establish an earlier point for a veteran to be treated as receiving VA compensation for home loan purposes. VA supports, but is concerned that it could result in a complex back-end refund process that would be confusing for veterans, service members, lenders, and VA employees, and that the bill could lead to an unsustainable financial position. VA does not support H.R. 3738 that would establish a new Veterans Economic Opportunity and Transition Administration. VA appreciates Congress's focus on improving services and resources offered by these programs. However, the current VBA structure reflects the Undersecretary for Benefits' overall responsibility that does include programs related to economic opportunity and transition, as well as compensation, pension, survivors' benefits, and insurance. The VBA portfolio forms a suite of resources that veterans can rely on. VA supports the Veteran Improvement Commercial Driver's License Act. VA believes approval of a course offered at a branch with less than a 2-year operation period under certain conditions would provide more training opportunities for veterans, boost employment in this occupational area, and still maintain state-approving agency authority and oversight. VA supports the Deliver for Veterans Act. This is a veteran-centric bill that potentially increases the automobile or other conveyance allowance for veterans. Amending the law to include the shipping costs would remove a cost burden to any veteran utilizing this benefit. Finally, VA would also support, if amended, to establish an amount payable for the monthly housing allowance under the post-9/11 GI Bill for certain distance learners enrolled during the summer. Mr. Chairman, as always, VA is open to collaboration with you and the committee to ensure we are providing world-class benefits that our veterans have earned and deserve. My colleagues and I would be glad to answer any questions you or a member of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. The written statement of Mr. Garcia will be entered into the hearing record. Ms. Devlin, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Van Orden and Ranking Member Levin and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing. The mission of the Department of Labor, Veterans Employment and Training Service, is to prepare America's veterans, service members, and military spouses for meaningful careers, provide them with employment opportunities and resources, promote their employment rights, and protect their employment rights. Today, the subcommittee is considering the Consolidating Veterans Employment Services for Improved Performance Act of 2023, a bill that would transfer the VETS agency from Department of Labor to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and likewise transfer the administration of the Jobs for Veterans State Grant, the Homeless Veteran Reintegration Program, the employment-related portion of the Transition Assistance Program, the DOL's Uniformed Services Employment Reemployment Rights Act enforcement responsibilities, and other related responsibilities. DOL strongly opposes this bill. DOL is the lead federal department for employment, training, and worker protection programs, with extensive resources and institutional expertise in those services, which cannot be replicated elsewhere. VETS is closely integrated with and depends on DOL staff and systems across the department to function. This includes VETS staff that are an integrated part of the public workforce system, which is administered by Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration and includes nearly 2,300 American job centers across the country. These one-stop locations offer a broad range of career wraparound services to the public, such as job training programs, unemployment insurance, child care assistance, and many other types of services, with priority of services for veterans. DOL is also one of the largest and most experienced grant-making departments within the federal government, and our grant officers are a part of the Employment and Training Administration's Office of Grants and Management. Our highly specialized USERRA compliance staff similarly work hand-in-hand with the Solicitor's Office. VETS depends on and closely collaborates with many other Department of Labor agencies and cannot properly function without all the staff, resources, IT, and data systems, and other support provided by and situated throughout the department, which cannot be replicated at VA. And if VETS is moved to the VA, then veterans will lose a significant voice within the public workforce system, as there would be no longer an agency within the Department of Labor that prioritizes and has the expertise needed to speak on behalf of this military community. DOL VETS has also been highly successful in accomplishing our mission, with positive performance outcomes for our programs. My written testimony details our successes at great length, but in total, across our programs, DOL Vet successfully serves over 440,000 veterans, service members, and military spouses each year. The data shows that all DOL Vets' employment and compliance programs are providing historically high performance outcomes. These outcomes are a direct result of the knowledge and hard work of DOL employees and of the processes and relationships that we've built within the department. And there is no evidence that moving vets to the VA would improve efficiency or effectiveness of our programs. On the contrary, it would be incredibly disruptive to our programs and the people we serve. The focus and time of DOL leaders and staff and the resources of our agency would immediately shift away from our successful institution and toward the task of implementing this costly transition to the VA. I know that we share a passion and commitment for serving veterans and military families. Regardless of the eventual outcome of this legislation being considered, I want every member to know that I will continue to work with you and your staff, as always, and stakeholders to improve and continue to improve our programs. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today, and I will happily answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Devlin. The written statement of Ms. Devlin will be entered into the hearing record. We're now going to proceed to questionings, and I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Garcia? Your VA test, by the way, you guys know the deal. I read all your written testimony. It's great. So even though I'm talking to Kate here, it's about some details, but I've read it all, and it's very thorough, and I appreciate the fact that you put a significant amount of work into that. Mr. Garcia, your VA testimony states that the VBA's portfolio is thriving. Could you briefly go into a little bit more detail, specifically centered around the word thriving?
Sir, we are very proud of what we do at VBA, and some of the numbers that we have seen in FY23 are record-breaking. I can't speak for all the business lines, but I do believe in education service. We may have a disagreement on certain things, but Digital GI Bill, to me, is working for our veterans and for our school certifying officials. We just passed the 3 millionth enrollment in Enrollment Manager, so I can get into more details, but I do believe the record shows that VBA is thriving.
Well, so, sir, the last time that you came here and testified on behalf of the VA, we're discussing this, the issues with the subcommittee, and I can't agree with the word thriving. For instance, on August 17th, the ranking member and I, as well as the Subcommittee on Technology Modernization, sent a letter regarding our concepts of the digital GI program. This letter had a deadline for September 15th, which was the anniversary of the invasion of Incheon, in case you're a history buff. Yet we didn't get a response until nearly a month after that, on October 10th. So maybe we have different definitions of the word thriving, Mr. Garcia. So if we ask you for a product and we give a deadline and it takes more than or just under a month to get that back over the deadline, I don't think that you guys are operating in an efficient manner, and that has shown a cascading effect throughout several of these programs. I mean, could you agree that that's a truthful statement?
For that one-time situation, I would agree, sir, but I don't think that conveys the entire year that we've had in FY23, for example. And earlier I did accept responsibility for that one situation.
All right, and so creating a fourth admin, essentially, in the VBA to handle economic opportunity issues would create accountability to make sure it doesn't happen again. I have some concerns about the government bureaucracy. Actually, I have a lot of concerns about government bureaucracy, but it's clear that there's something with the education program that might benefit from more attention at a higher level of the VA. One area that might benefit from a higher level of attention is the enrollment manager. And VA has touted its huge success. However, the subcommittee has heard that over 50% of school certifying officials have problems with the system, and our staff has witnessed these problems firsthand. That's a significant amount, Mr. Garcia. I just want you to understand that we have a different understanding of thriving, again, and I think success, and a 50% failure rate is certainly not successful, and that being able to have a different group that solely focuses on this at a higher level would be beneficial, and I understand that you oppose that. Could you tell me briefly why?
Sir, you mentioned enrollment manager. Again, I have a different perspective. We actually asked for a survey through our NAPA partner. I think you asked for it. The 21 top concerns with enrollment manager, the top 10, and I briefed this a few weeks ago at a conference, the top 10 concerns with enrollment manager 9 out of the 10 were already addressed with releases going back to May. So maybe there's a communication gap, but 9 out of the 10 issues that were raised were addressed, and the number one issue is also being addressed for December release. So I would have a different perspective when it comes to enrollment manager. I hear more positive news than maybe you hear. Mr. Ruman and I have visited SCOs at different conferences, probably over 1,000 SCOs, and so I get a different perspective, sir.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Ms. Devlin, can you tell me the funding level of the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program and how these funds are being distributed? And have any of these funds been redirected from this program without our knowledge?
Thank you for the question. The budget for fiscal year 23 for the Homeless Veteran Reintegration Program was $65.5 million, and that includes payments for obligating grants to HVRP grantees. It includes technical assistance. It includes stand-downs. It includes information technology infrastructure for the program. And without your knowledge, no, sir, we did transfer funds, but we did notify the appropriate committee per requirements.
Thank you very much. My time has expired, and I recognize Ranking Member Levin for